Hey guys, it's DanSpex here. I'm doing another how to draw video. This time I'm going to be drawing Knuckles. You might be wondering why I'm skipping Tails. I just thought I'd do Knuckles because he's actually my second favorite character to draw besides Sonic. I think I'll do Tails in a later video, but right now I figured I'd do Knuckles also because of the new short that came out for the Sonic Frontiers prologue. And so to commemorate that, I figured why not. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So at first, of course, I always start off with the head, just a basic circle. You got your guidelines to show where the middle of the face is going to be. And unlike Sonic's eyes, I draw Knuckles. Well, Knuckles has more so sharper eyes at the top, kind of like triangles. He is a very triangle-centric character. What I mean by that is he has a lot of triangles incorporated into his design. So like his eyes, his nose, even his snout is a lot more triangular-ish, if that's even a word, rather than Sonic's more rounded off appearance. And that's actually to show off that he's a kind of a wild card, kind of like an eccentric, crazy character, which he just has that brash personality. So then here, of course, you just got to stretch out his snout. His snout sticks out a lot more than Sonic's, that's why it points out. And then moving on to his spikes, or I guess his drids rather. Like Sonic, I just kind of work through it, just kind of not really a specific rule or way I go about it. However, a good thing to keep in mind when drawing his dreads is that the further he is facing away from the camera, the more of his dreads will show up. So if he's like really looking away from the camera, he's gonna have about 4 dreads. If he's facing more towards the camera, probably 3. Here I got his 4, with the one in the back is a lot shorter than the others. And then moving on to his body, I like to give him more of a broad chest. He has a more rectangular body than Sonic, whereas he has a simple oval type body. Knuckles has a more broaded, he has broader shoulders. At least that's what I like to give him, just to really sell the fact that he's the strong person of the team. And then his hands are just basic circles, which is one reason why I like drawing him, is that it's really easy to draw his hands. As any artist will tell you, hands are a nightmare to draw, but with Knuckles, he has those big ol' boxing gloves, just basic circles that you can, that he mostly has them in fists all the time, so it's pretty simple to draw those. And then with his general body shape, in general, I like to base it a little more towards the, I guess, the beefier design aspect, like kind of what the movie gave him. That's a huge inspiration for how I draw Knuckles. I just don't really like how the games give him just a really skinny noodle-like body. I like to give him some beef to him, just again to portray that he is the strong person of the group. He's more so about power rather than speed. But yeah, so just the sketch, I just go very loose with it, very free-flowing, and then you can just clean it up as many times as you want. That's just kind of how I go about drawing. His shoes are more cubic-like, rather than Sonic's more triangle-ish shoes. They're like combat boots. Yeah, I'm just fixing up the little details. I made his head a lot larger because for some reason it's really stretched out in the back. Knuckles has a long ass head, I don't know, for some reason. And yeah, just cleaning up my sketch before I move on to the next step. Yeah, sketching kind of takes me a little while. I just always like to make sure I get the posing right. Make sure I'm happy with the sketch, just so I don't have to change as much later on. Here I'm defining more of his hands, and then just dragging, moving. Always take your time, see how you like to sketch, however you want. But then once you are done with your sketch, then we do move on to the outline. If you're trying to traditionally or just want to know the basics of how to draw Knuckles, you could stop here. But now I'm going to be going into the more kind of digital side of how I draw. I mean, some of these techniques could apply to traditional. Feel free to watch more if you'd like. So here we are going on to the outline. Same thing that I said in the last video. Line weight is a very important detail that you have to keep in mind whenever doing your lines. If you just draw them the same consistency throughout your drawing, it's gonna kind of look a little still, a little boring. Really exaggerate certain lines, make some lines thin, make some lines thick. It just gives a nice contrast. Make the thicker lines will be more eye-catching that you want the audience to see. Thinner lines will kind of draw away and take less focus away. Outlining is basically just tracing over your sketch, making it look cleaner, fixing it up in some areas, just making it look nice and more presentable. And yeah, just going over it, which also you want to, whenever a line comes to a stop in a certain part of your drawing, I like to give it that nice sharp end, just so it looks nicer, like you can see in the crease in his eyebrows or that crease in his cheek. It just makes it look a little nice rather than if it were to just end off more square. Besides sketching, outlining probably takes me the second longest to do in a drawing. I always just like to make sure I get all the lines right, and it just kind of takes me a little while to, make sure everything's right, everything's flowing. I always do whenever I'm doing a new line, I put it on a separate layer and then I merge it later. Here in his quills, you don't want to make them too sharp. At the ends, I kind of make them a little rounded out just so they look a little nicer. Again, kind of erasing that edge where it just abruptly stops to make it look a little nicer. Can't forget about the dread on the other side of his head. Sometimes I forget about that. But yeah, and then just, you don't have to go over everything like your sketch. Like, I just don't draw his full shoulder because it's hiding behind his hair. But yeah, basically just tracing over your sketch like I've said before, which is probably a good time for me to talk about why I like drawing Knuckles. He's my second favorite character to draw from the Sonic franchise. He has a really cool, unique design like Sonic. They just all have like a very style to them. Knuckles being, the strong one of the group. He's really cool for dynamic posing, for action scenes, just displaying that brute strength he has. I feel like you could do a lot with his character. I feel like there's a lot you do with his character. Of course, having those giant wrecking ball hands, it really makes for some cool dynamic posing. But yeah, Knuckles has always been one of my favorites to draw, and he's probably my second favorite character in the whole franchise, if I'm being honest. His backstory and everything is so unique with his tribe, him being the last of his kind. He stands out a lot with the Sonic cast. And speaking of which, I feel like it would be a good time for me to talk about the recent prologue that they came out with, and I just have to say, it's phenomenal. If you haven't checked out the prologue yet, I really highly suggest you do. But if you're watching this video, you've most likely watched that by now. But I just have to say, they really nail his character in it. He's no longer the stupid, short-tempered. He's no longer the stupid, short-tempered dumbass that the recent games have been portraying him in. He's actually serious. He cares about guarding the Master Emerald and about his ancestors. Of course, he's not the brightest, but it's more so he prioritizes his strength than technique. He fights first, asks questions later. That whole fight scene was really, really good. The animation was top notch. Seriously, Tyson Hess and the team of animators that worked on this project, I mean, just bravo. And also Ian Flynn, who wrote this prologue, I just have to say, dude, like, Sega, you better keep him on to do the future games. I've been playing a little bit of Frontiers recently, and the writing in that game is just, you seriously have to do more of the games, Ian. You're just, it's so good, so good. But yeah, them releasing the prologue kind of inspired me to do this. Knuckles has always been an interesting character, whether it's in the games, the cartoons, the movie especially. It's so good. So I figured I'd do this, and I actually wanted to bring up, what inspires me to draw Knuckles the way I do, kind of like what I did with Sonic. First off, of course, you got Yuji Uekawa's art. Again, they're more so based on the game, so I don't really care that for him being as skinny as he draws him, but I really like how he draws him when he's punching or in an action stance. He is just, the way he draws him is so dynamic and so cool. Of course, the big ones, Tyson Hess, Knuckles being his favorite character, of course. He just gives him so much personality in the face and his body language. He draws him not always serious at times. He could be a little goofy at times, which I like. Overall, he does a great job of portraying the character. Of course, the movie's design is a big inspiration for me. I really like the body proportions they gave him, just further displaying that he is stronger and not going so much towards what Boom did. I really think that Sonic Boom's design of Knuckles was too exaggerated, too extreme. I feel like the movie hit a nice balance on how strong he is, letting his fists be the main focus, but also kind of giving him more broad shoulders and a more, just a bigger torso overall. Yeah, his shoes, always liked how his shoes look. I don't know what's up with the metal plates on top. Those are always weird to draw, but yeah, you just draw circles for those, and like they're little cylinders that sit on top. But yeah, once you're done with the outline, then we do move on to coloring. It's just basic, creating another layer underneath your outline. Of course, I said this in the last video, but I always like to actually manually color it in rather than using a paint bucket tool. It just helps me know that I got every crevice and every part of the drawing filled in. As the program that I use, it could just be I don't know how to use it, but it it's just kind of hard to figure out where in the surface it's covering. But if you're wondering again what program I use, I said in the last video, but I do use a program called Krita. It's good, it's for free, for any artist to get into drawing. It is a really cool tool. Of course, it's not as advanced as Photoshop or Paint Tool Sci, but it's really good. Of course, I give him that really bright red, purple eyes, and you know, of course, he has those green socks. Again, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I like to curve his socks a little in, so that way they look like socks, not like the metal plates that the games do. Those just look kind of weird. I don't care for that all too much. And then you do want to make his shoes a slightly darker red. I go in and fix it. You don't want to probably make it this dark. If you want to, that's cool, but yeah, I just like to make it just a little darker than his fur color. And of course, if you want to fix any color to a drawing, you can select the layer that the color is on, lock the layer, and then you could just paint it over without having to refill or recolor it again. That's really useful. Like, here I go with the shoes. See, I lock the layer and then I just quickly swipe over it and it changes. But yeah, once you're done with coloring, then we do move on to the last final steps, which is shading and highlighting. So with shading, you want to pick a light source. I have one coming from the top left of the screen. It's shining down on his face. So that means all the shadows are going to travel from the bottom right of him. So in here, you know, all his dreads, of course the shadows are on the right side of it. And you just always want to do a darker red or a darker blue, red for warmer colors or blue for lighter colors. You just always want to highlight with either red or blue, as it makes it look a little more lively. You never want to shade with black or gray. It just kind of, if you shade with black or gray, it just makes it look a little muddy and not as, just doesn't really make it all look good. But yeah, of course you want to shade with either a red or a blue tone, depending on what the colors are. Of course, him being red, I go in with a darker red, and then we'll soon see later, like, the colors like the green, make it a little more blue, a little darker green. Yeah, and then you always want your shadows to kind of curve along your drawing in a more rounded off rather than a straight line, as it gives it more depth, a little more 3D, just so people know that it's in 3D. It doesn't make it look as static. But yeah, see in the socks I give it a little blue tint just because it is a cooler color. And then with these plates on his shoes, you just kind of shade them how the divots are pointing up. You know, they cast a little shadow, and then you want to put a shadow on where the plate itself is raised. And yeah, see here with the white, I actually like to do this. This is what Tyson Hess does. I like to shade in the white part of the characters with their kind of like signature color. So Knuckles being red, I like to shade in the white part of his design with a lighter red, almost a pinkish kind of color to it. Just makes it a little cool. It's just something distinct for every character. I think that's just really cool. So now we move on to the final step, which is the highlights. This is very simple, at least for me. I just like to go in with a white highlight. It just makes it pop out a little more, kind of gives it a little more comic book feel. But yeah, you want to put the white highlights where the light source is coming from. And then I put it, you know, on his head, his muzzle, and the eyes. And then don't forget to sign your work, and you're done. This is how I draw Knuckles. He's a really cool character to draw. I really like to see your guys' pieces, your guys' drawings of Knuckles. Go ahead and feel free to tag me on Instagram at Dan's Drawing Corner. Send me your pictures of Knuckles if you followed along with this video, or I'd like to see the different poses you guys draw, the different expressions, the different art styles. I just always like to see new art, so feel free to tag me there on Instagram. And if you like, go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram as well. I need to start drawing more on there. But yeah, with all that said, I'm DanSpex, and I'll catch you later. Have a good one.